Title: Jack's Stolen Crown by Sarah. This is where I introduce my setting of Mother Goose Town. Mother Goose Town was a beautiful town. People were busier than ever. A little out of the town was Farmer Nadell's farm, and across the street was Jack and Jill Daycare Center, and beside Jack and Jill Daycare Center was Old Mother Hubbard's shoe. And across Mother Hubbard's was the wall where Humpty had once fallen off. No one was at the wall. There are many things to do in Mother Goose Town, because no one would expect this beautiful day to bring a mystery to solve. This is where I introduce my crime scene. Humpty Dumpty was now out of the Mother Goose Town Hospital, and with the wonders of medical proceeds, he was put back together. Humpty Dumpty became Chief Detective of Mother Goose Town. In the meantime, Humpty was in his office. He received a call from Jill at 7 o'clock a.m. Jack had fallen off the hill and someone stole his crown. This is where I introduce my detective. My detective is Humpty Dumpty. Humpty Dumpty, the hard-boiled egg, was now Chief Detective of Mother Goose Town and works very hard. Detective Humpty wore a brown detective coat and a little notebook and pen to take down notes about mysteries he has solved. Now he is on the mystery to find out who stole Jack's crown. This is where I introduce my first suspect, Jack and the Beanstalk. Jack usually steals a lot of beans from the giant, so could he have stolen Jack's missing crown? Since he has the history of stealing, his mother claims that he has been in his room all day. They looked in his room and the window was open. My next suspect is Miss Muffet. Little Miss Muffet sat on her tuffet eating her curds and whey, when along came a spider and frightened her away. She could have gone off her tuffet when Jack rolled over and stole the crown while running by. My third suspect is Little Red Riding Hood. Little Red Riding Hood was on her way to her grandmother's house carrying a basket of fruit. But what type of fruit? Could it be prickly like the crown? Was it only fruit, or did she steal Jack's missing crown? This is where I introduce my first witness report. My first witness is Goldilocks. Detective Humpty went to Goldilocks' house because she was sitting on her rocking chair outside knitting at the time of the fall. Hi, Goldilocks. I was wondering if you knew anything about Jack's stolen crown, asked Humpty. I saw Jack and the Beanstalk run as fast as he could past my house, but he could have just stolen the magic beans from the giant again. This is where I introduce my second witness report. My second witness is Joe Dumpty. Detective Humpty went to his brother Joe Dumpty's office because Joe called him over to his office to provide evidence for the investigation. Hey, Joe, do you know who stole Jack's crown? Asked Humpty. Well, I did see Miss Muffet jumping off her tuffet when Jack was falling. She could have ran by and stole Jack's crown. This is where I introduce my last witness report. My last witness is Old Mother Hubbard's. Detective Humpty went to Old Mother Hubbard's house because she was at the park on the bench watching her children play. Hello, do you know anything about Jack's missing crown? Asked Humpty. I did hear about what happened to Jack. Red Riding Hood showed me a crown on her way to her grandmother's house. I think it was Jack's crown, replied Mother Hubbard. This is where I introduce my first clue. Detective Humpty looked around the hill for any clues. He saw a dirt road leading to the forest. Humpty followed the dirt road track. Humpty saw little girl red shoe footprints leading into the forest. He followed the track. This is where I introduce my second clue. Detective Humpty wondered why it was leading to the forest. What if it was Little Red Riding Hood bringing a basket of sweets to her grandmother? She could have taken Jack's missing crown and gave it to her grandmother. This is where I introduce my third clue. Detective Humpty just remembered. Right before he saw the footprints, he saw a crown print. He curiously wondered what this meant. He continued to follow the clues. This is where I introduce my fourth clue. Detective Humpty noticed a piece of red cloth on a bush of beautiful red roses. This meant that Detective Humpty was close to Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother's house. This is where I introduce my last clue. When Humpty arrived at Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother's house, Humpty saw Little Red Riding Hood placing Jack's crown on her grandmother's head. They were also eating fruit. Humpty solved who the thief was. This is where I introduce my red herring. When Jack and the Beanstalk was running away from the giant, he was noticed by Goldilocks. Goldilocks went to tell Detective Humpty that she observed Jack running away from the crime scene. So Detective Humpty began to ask questions to his witness Goldilocks. From the questions that he has asked Goldilocks, it does not seem like Jack stole the crown. He dropped the beans at the crime scene when he was running away from the giant. This is where I introduce my case solved. The case was solved with Little Red Riding Hood's fingerprints and seeing with the crown on her grandmother's head. The last clue was Red Riding Hood placing Jack's crown on her grandmother's and in her house. Humpty did a fingerprint test on Jack's crown, and Little Red Riding Hood's fingerprints were on the crown, as well as Jack's fingerprints because the crown belongs to Jack. This is where I introduce my story, Jack's Stolen Crown by Sarah. It was a beautiful day in Mother Goose Town. People were busier than ever. Outside the town was Farmer in the Dell's farm. Farmer in the Dell was taking care of his animals. Across the street was Jack and Jill Daycare Center. Jack and Jill were up the hill to get a pail of water. Beside Jack and Jill Daycare Center was old Mother Hubbard's house. Mother Hubbard was watching her children play at the park. Out across Mother Hubbard's was the wall where Humpty had once fallen off. No one was at the wall. The wall was empty. There are many things to do in Mother Goose Town. No one would expect this beautiful day would bring a mystery to solve. Humpty Dumpty was now out of the Mother Goose Town Hospital, and with the wonders of medical proceeds, he was put back together. Humpty Dumpty became Chief Detective of Mother Goose Town. Humpty Dumpty, the hard-boiled egg, was now Chief Detective of Mother Goose Town and works very hard. Detective Humpty wore a brown detective coat and a little notebook and pen to take down notes about mysteries he has solved. In the meantime, Humpty Dumpty was in his office. He received a call from Jill Hill at 7 o'clock a.m. Jack had fallen off the hill and someone stole his crown. Now he is on the mystery to find out who stole Jack's crown. The next day, Detective Humpty was in his office thinking about who stole Jack's crown. At the crime scene were some magic beans, so off Detective Humpty curiously went to Jack and the Beanstalk's house. He knocked on the door, and Jack's mother opened the door, and she welcomed him in. Humpty and Jack's mother were having a little conversation about Jack and the Beanstalk maybe stealing Jack's crown. Jack's mother claimed, "Jack has been in his room all day." They looked in his room and the window was open. "He must have jumped out of the window." Detective Humpty left and was on his way to his office. He noticed Goldilocks rocking on her chair outside knitting. Humpty asked Goldilocks if she noticed Jack running by. Yes, he was in a big hurry running away from the giant, Goldilocks replied. Detective Humpty realized that Jack and the Beanstalk was not a suspect anymore. A while later, little Miss Muffet sat on her tuffet eating her curds and whey, when along came a spider and frightened her away. Detective Humpty was on his way to his brother Joe's office. Humpty asked if Miss Muffet stole Jack's crown. No, she is just having a hard time with the spider scaring her. Humpty realized that Miss Muffet was not a suspect anymore either. The next day, Detective Humpty got out of bed and ate breakfast. Then Detective Humpty went on his morning walk. Humpty noticed old Mother Hubbard watching her children playing at the park. Humpty walked up to her. "Hello, do you know anything about Jack's missing crown?" asked Humpty. "Well, I did hear about what happened to Jack," answered Mother Hubbard. "Little Red Riding Hood showed me a crown. Then she put it back in her basket and went down the dirt road by Jack and Jill Daycare Center," told Mother Hubbard. Detective Humpty went the directions that Mother Hubbard had told him. When he went down the dirt road, he noticed a crown print on the dirt. He curiously wondered what this meant. Right next to the crown prints, Humpty saw little girl red shoe footprints leading into the forest. He followed the track. Detective Humpty was really curious why they were leading to the forest. Could it have been Little Red Riding Hood took the crown and brought it to her grandmother to keep? Thought Humpty. Detective Humpty was getting closer to Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother's house because he was at the bush where grandmother lived close by. Humpty took a look at the bush and he noticed a red cloth that felt like Little Red Riding Hood's hood. He continued to follow the clues. When Detective Humpty arrived at Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother's house, he saw Red Riding Hood placing the crown on her grandmother's head. After Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother were eating fruit and the crown was on her grandmother's head. The mystery is solved and Little Red Riding Hood stole the missing crown because she wanted to give it to her grandmother. The crown print had pretty jewels on it and her grandmother loved jewels. To have more solid evidence, Humpty performed a fingerprint test on the crown. Little Red Riding Hood's fingerprints were on the crown. After, she returned the crown to Jack and Mother Goosetown returned to busy.